Well, first of all, I really enjoy our discussions because we're always talking about architecture and what architecture is, right? And I think that's essential for a discourse about architecture, rather talking about the output, talking about what the input could be. And so when you ask the question, the long-term goals, I think at the heart of Condition Lab is this idea to change how we practice architecture. I mean, this is fundamental for us, right? And it starts from this idea that I think, and I think this is reflected in society, hardly anybody can afford to work with an architect, right? So, maybe in the Western world, it could be 10%, but I think it's much closer to 1%. And so what's our role? We're just working for people who can afford good design and get good design. And the rest of the people that really need help in terms of design, we can't work for, right? And so one of the things for us is to actually not rethink form. There are many people who are good at form and aesthetics, but we want to rethink the idea of practice, right? And we see architecture really as a tool to improve people's lives. That's the goal that we want to do. And all the projects have this idea of putting people first. So that's what we want to do. How do we put people first? For us, it's very simple and very beautiful. Architecture is connected to purpose. If you have purpose, then there is going to be something that can make a difference. To participate in a community, to participate with stakeholders, what is essential for me is that you build a sense of trust, right? And the sense of trust doesn't come by, for example, going to a place and saying that you've got the solution. Going to a sense of trust is that you listen and that you don't propose anything. You just let the people speak and you listen. And then what happens is that what we have the ability is to say that, okay, we map what we hear and we say, well, look, these are the things that you want. And for example, when we go to the rural villages in China, there are lots of problems. There are lots of problems of ecology. There are lots of problems of environmental problems that the villages are growing at an unprecedented speed. And they don't realize the impact of this, and the things that they require or the things that they want are all very immediate things, right? And they forget that one of the things that is important for these communities is the sense of heritage. So what we say is, well, okay, we hear you, but what about your heritage? What about if instead of heritage being a museum, heritage could be something that is living? So we came up with this notion of living heritage. And so that's built by listening, but also proposing. I think that's what an architect can do. It's just like, if you tell me what you want, then a lot of people say, well, we want showers and we want new toilets. Well, that's for sure, they need that, but they can't see the bigger vision. So we always say, okay. But the other important part about the stakeholders is, first is trust, but the other process is time. We want to do things slowly. We don't believe that you can do things fast, right? We live in an architectural world where everything has to be done tomorrow, everything has to be done super realistically, and everything has to be, beautiful. No, we do very rough things. We take a long time and we build things with people, with carpenters, with students, and it takes a hell of a lot of time because it's not easy to build things. So in my opinion, together, it has inside that word that you use, it has so many things. And for us, I think it's got trust and slowness. And if you conceive togetherness with a sense of time, right, that changes things, right? Don't be in a rush. We're in it for the long term. And the second, trust, then togetherness changes a little bit. We have several models. And of course, the model of the philanthropic model, where we look for donors, eventually it can't sustain itself. We know that. But one of the reasons why I think the lab is so powerful is that we don't have preconceived ideas of how we get funding. And I would just like to give you an example. We're working in Africa, and we're working in some projects in Kenya. And we set up to do two projects. One, where we had funding from a donor, and other one where we don't, right? And both are equally important with communities that really need our help. And we said, okay, we've got to go and help them. We don't know how we're going to raise the money, but we knew that we had to go and visit the village. And so when we went to visit the village, the team, and that's why I always want to be surrounded by different type of people who think differently from me. We noticed that a lot of the local women's group make jewelry, right? Now, what one of the directors, Paula, said, well, this is a huge opportunity. So these are beautiful jewelry. We bought the jewelry, and we take the jewelry back to Hong Kong and China, and we start to sell it, right? And every element of the jewelry, this is made by the local people, sold in China. We buy it for 1, we sell it for 10, right? And I think we've got to think as architects to design the way we finance our projects, not think of, knocking on doors and getting donors, not thinking that we can make beautiful artistic posters and people are going to buy our posters. We've got to think like entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs, they know how to generate money. And I think there's nothing wrong with generating money to help people. I'm very interested in the indirect, because the indirect has led us to, I think we're at the beginning of formulating something which is, I kind of put it in my words, but it's related to architecture for people. There is something that your organization and the people that you've invited and the way we think is really stemming towards an architecture for people. And I think this is really a big issue and is really something that the architectural community need to hear, right? People, because the architecture is so close to them, they don't see what is exactly in front of them, and we've lost this sense of values of architecture that we need to help people, right? So I think the indirect is, for me, the most important, and this notion that people have to come first, and that people are not the background, but people are the foreground. If you have that change, then this is really amazing. The direct things, I think are, is first of all, your network, right? So we've been able to speak to people that never would have heard of us before. We spoke to the Aga Khan. The Aga Khan is interested to sort of set up projects of the book house that we do in places like Syria and even in Pakistan. So they're looking. Of course, it's early days, but they are aware of what we do. But also the possibilities of talking to architects and communities that I think we can help in ways that, for example, in one of the sharing sessions, there was a community in Peru, and I really believe that we have the capability of helping these people through students empowering students, not even within the lab, but students that I know around the world that would easily want to participate in these projects. So the direct is building projects, but the indirect is building a philosophy. And we want to work with the carpenters, so that the carpenters and the textile makers and whoever it is that work in the village can generate their own income, right? So we're creating centers where now architecture is not building projects, but is collaborating with the local people so that they don't need us anymore, right? So we can leave, but the center is there, and the center, and we can go back to the center, but the center is kind of running itself. For example, we're doing a project in an informal settlement in Kibera, which is in the center of Kenya, right? And I think this project is going to be just amazing for the people, not for the architecture, but for the people. We are most of our projects, resonate around about the impact of the children is about, between 100 to 300. In Kibera, we have 4,000 children that could use this facility. Now, that's different. This is a different type of organization. It's the same model, it's the same cost, it's the same size, but all of a sudden, instead of 200 people using it, it's 4,000. Right now, this is different. So we're very interested to work with people to see how we can, how could we teach these children, especially girls, digital skills. If they learn any kind of digital skill, they can get a different job. And maybe it means that they don't get married at 16, but they get married at 22. And this is a big difference, right? So